To the Deputy Minister. I just want to, because maybe you've spoken of RAPs, the withdrawal and then the reintroduction of these things. But I want to just deal with the elephant in the room, maybe in a nutshell for the interest of the public as well. There is because I would like to pick your mind on this, to get what is your opinion on it. I don't know if you're in a position to do that. There is a perception out there that the much fight and battle between RAF and this entire thing of how it is determined or seen has to do with the big corporate white firms, white law firms, which have been beneficiaries of RAF more than the people themselves. And the battle thereon is for the sustainability of that beneficiation or that looting spree by these law firms at the prejudice of the people on the ground. And I found many submissions by the CEO of RAF logical, beside in the current stage whether it is legal to proceed and not comply, which is a separate matter. But I'm saying in a long term, there are logical arguments presented around how RAF should be structured so that we're able to mitigate and ensure that the end users, the ultimate beneficiaries, are the ones who benefit at the receiving end. So the review or the reintroduction of RAPs, does it change anything in that context? What is the view of the Deputy Minister around, not now, whether compliance or not, but future projections, and looking at RAF as an entity for its own sustainability, whether as an insurer or as a social grant? I wanted to just make that. Thank you.
Chairperson, this conversation will require a full day, because I think what I have tried to present to the committee is the prevailing dilemmas at play in this meeting and in the previous meeting. One, we've got a funding challenge, and I've indicated the interventions which we seek to do in that regard, and the exploration of other revenue streams, and to engage Treasury that the withdrawal of the REF levy at the pumps is not something that can be considered at this point in the absence of a concrete plan of how we're going to fund REF. Therefore, the funding model of REF is at the upper focus of what we want to do. That's point number one. Secondly, I've indicated that it is my suggestion in my opening remarks that the LPC be called to this committee to explain itself and its own conduct, and that of the professional fraternity in its entirety, to deal with, amongst others, challenges which seek to say monies do not reach claimants. And I mean, I'm sitting day in and day out with a stack of correspondence from South Africans. And REF will return and say that monies were paid out and that money went to the lawyers. So it's logical, Chair, that the key question around lawyers must receive the priority attention of any review. I've engaged, as I've said in my opening remarks, with some of the law professionals. In one instance, I called the CEO and pulled him out of one meeting so that I could provide real-time responses to some of the issues that and the health practitioners, by the way, because it's not just the legal fraternity. There's also the health practitioners whom we need to deal with. And hence the reference I keep on making around the implications of the NHI. The third point, Chairperson, is what I've already indicated and the CEO has elaborated on further. Paying lump sums is not sustainable for the claimant nor for REF, given the financial challenges we have of revenue streams for money. And so as we go to this review, one of the things we need to do is to define the benefits. A class issue, a race issue has been raised, but more so a class issue around the actual estimations and final products which come out as to whether Hlengwa's arm is a 10 rand and Joe Soap's arm is 50 rand, right? So those are all the critical issues we need to look at. And therefore, when I make the statement that REF is not a money-making scheme, it is meant across the board. It's not a money-making scheme for lawyers, it's not a money-making scheme for health practitioners, and nor is it a money-making scheme for the claimants. So those are the issues we need to deal with. It remains my outlook that if you win the lotto, right, and every time the Powerball reaches 100 million rand, somehow someone wins it, I'm advised that before you get your money, you get some sort of counseling, right? So whether we're paying lump sum or we're paying in tranches, there has to be a semblance of also financial counseling for how claimants actually will utilize their money so that we can prevent a situation which prevails like in the lotto where people then say, I blew it, because then they come back to us. The other consideration is that there's long-term medical effects which arise as a result of an injury or as a result of the accident, which then are brought back to REF in one way or the other where they are expected to deal with. The final point is the reforms we seek to do, amongst others, seek to say, how do we ensure that the right claim reaches the right South African claimant? You cannot have a situation of porous borders as we do, and by being in the country illegally, you get a full-scale benefit of the provisions of the country, whereas you're not paying tax in any way. You are not contributing in any way. So these reforms must be looked at from that particular perspective to say, in the last meeting, REF pointed out to the fact that we have Americans claiming us hundreds of millions of rands because the actual calculations are done in dollars, and therefore when converted to the South African rand, they're astronomical. And I think it's 3 Belgian doctors, right? Amongst others. So those are all the considerations that we have to make. What this requires is engagement with Home Affairs on visa requirements as well, which must seek to protect the South African economy and the South African government's interventions, including but not limited to what REF does. Finally, Chairperson, we cannot therefore look at the dilemmas at REF in isolation to what is happening in the road sector in its entirety. And so we need to be imaginative about streams of revenue. The trucks we have on the roads, pulling all sorts of goods, need to be taken off the road. So the road-to-rail system is critical because it seeks to, amongst others, deal with accidents. You look at what I was pointing to earlier on. Chair, South Africa is number 5 in the world for alcohol consumption. The World Health Organization's report. Now, what are the social implications of the high levels of alcohol consumption? At what point do we begin, Chairperson, I dare say, apportioning blame to accident causes? To what point do we begin apportioning blame and responsibility to the ones who are giving us accidents, whether it's road users? I mean, if I am going to walk where I'm not supposed to walk, the key question, and then I'm involved in an accident, driver I'm not supposed to drive, it should not be automatic, right? So that you are a REF claimant. So, Chair, what I'm saying is that, yes, the issue of lawyers is a problem, but we need to expand the scope of our dilemma, that it's not hinged just to one reality. It's an entire ecosystem of problems which we seek to actually resolve at this point in time.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Minister. I'll come to you, Honorable Atkinson, just now. I just want to say to you, Deputy Minister, and the Chair, and the Chief Executive, because as we discuss these matters narrowly that we deal with, like many other issues, and I'm really glad with your input. I'm happy with your last input, Deputy Minister, because the Road Accident Fund sits at the apex of everybody's problems. And they manifest themselves as claims into the system. And in a sense, I'm not certain there will ever be a model that takes care of the problem. There is the issue of driver behavior. When you mention the number of accidents that we had in December versus the number of fatalities that we had, it speaks to a multiple vehicle occupancy accident issue. Buses, taxis, cars with lots of people, and so on, and there is an issue. Unfortunately for you, Honorable Deputy Minister, all of these problems, most of them sit in your portfolio. We can talk about alcohol and these other things, but I just want to say, especially to the public, as we discuss these matters, for me it is clear that we can't look to the Road Accident Fund to solve bigger problems after the fact. That's just not sustainable. I am also glad that we're going to deal with the issues of how non-South Africans are catered for by the legislation or not. I have no expectation to be paid out in the UK when I go there. They ask me to take medical insurance, and that's that. We will have the Legal Practice Council here. They absolutely must come here because there is also a moral obligation on people, and a legal one, to do right by those claimants. And finally, I think one of the things we must all be able to kind of communicate accurately, that there are policy issues, legislative and policy issues, which is where the amendment of the legislation is concerned, and there are also the funding challenges. And the last thing I'm going to say, which you know very well, we all celebrate when the finance minister says no increase to the RAF levy. The problem with that is that on the other end, lots of people sit and say there's no money to pay me and I'm unhappy and so on. And I'm hoping that this is a teachable moment for all of us in terms of just how we understand the interconnected nature of the issues and the complexity. So to you, DM and Chair and CEO, we do not underestimate the complexity that you're dealing with and the difficulty of the issues. And I think it's work that has to be done under severe stress and public attention.